Jonathan Coppess, Clinical Assistant Professor for Law and Policy.
How long you been here?
Just over a month now.
And what'd you do before you came here?
So most recently I was Chief Counsel for the Senate Agriculture Committee for Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow in D.C.
Oh, nice. And so next week you're actually helping out with the Center for Farmland Research, Farmland Markets.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk about how the process, you're going to talk about the sausage in the process, aren't you?
A little bit. Obviously, like you said, the sausage, not everybody wants to know how legislation gets made. But I did spend the better part of the last 3 years working on the Farm Bill, helping to write the Farm Bill and bring it together. Still holding out hope that they will get it done here in the very near future and that we can get a 5-year bill in place. But I did that. Prior to that, I was at the Farm Service Agency, USDA, where I was the administrator of the agency. So
you went to school where?
I went to undergrad at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and then I did law school at George Washington University in D.C.
Are you an Ohio boy?
I grew up in Ohio. My family farms in western Ohio, right on the Indiana state line.
All right, nice.
Yeah.
And near Dayton or?
A little bit north of Dayton, about 45 minutes to an hour out of Dayton. We got we got some farm in Indiana, some land in Ohio, so we're kind of right on the state line there. And my dad and brothers are both back there farming, so.
Nice.
They kicked me off a while ago.
They kicked you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, oh, you're in Washington, that's not good. Oh, you're at the University of Illinois, that's not as good as OSU, but fine, that'll work.
Well, yeah, we.
Are they Indiana or Ohio fans? Or Purdue fans?
No, they're Ohio State. We're on the Ohio side of the state line, and my dad and both my brothers went to Ohio State, so I grew up with it.
So I'll get to the RFS here in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about next week still.
Sure.
They're a long way apart, but really only on that side of the issue, I think, and you can tell me, that belongs to food and feeding programs, not so much on that side of the issue that belongs to farm programs.
Well, I disagree a little bit. There is certainly what's been reported, and the biggest gulf, the biggest gap is on the nutrition side. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, used to be called food stamps. The House and the Senate are in very different places. It's one of those where it's hard to find or think about a middle ground, which makes the negotiation a little bit different. Somebody's going to have to, it's probably going to have to give on a position that's been pretty hard fought for. Title I, which is the commodity programs, the subsidy assistance, farm assistance programs, there's a lot of similarities, but there's some really big differences, and those are going to be difficult, I think, to sort out as well, because you have some very different, I'd almost say philosophical different views and differences in those views that don't necessarily lend themselves to easy compromise. But the name of the game in a conference committee is to come up with a compromise and find a way to sort of bring the pieces together, and I think there's a way. I think there are ways to do it. I have some confidence, although it's been a difficult process that's tested optimism at many steps along the way. I think they can find that. They can find a couple of those points.
It was interesting to watch the House as it moved through the process of the shutdown and the separating out the nutrition side, and then said, well, we started at 20 billion, I think, last, and that's not enough. Let's double that, and the Senate, of course, is at 6, if I remember.
No,
correctly.
4.
4. They're at 4. Gosh, that's a big gulf.
It's a huge gulf. I mean, the numbers are definitely far apart. Where the real issues are the policy, and it's just some fundamental differences in the way this program is viewed and the way the savings are achieved. The easiest way to think of it is the Senate looks at what we considered was not quite a loophole, but an issue in the way the benefit calculations were being calculated in some of the states. But nobody is kicked off the program or prevented from getting into the program. And whereas the House changed some of the eligibility pieces, and that's where you run into a lot of political issues. Now you're telling people that otherwise were getting benefits they no longer can, or those that would have been eligible no longer are eligible for the program, and that creates an entirely different political aspect to it. So the money's big, but it's the way the policy, the way you get to those savings, has a much bigger impact on the ground and in people's districts. And that then, you back that into the policy and the politics of it. Now you've created a situation that really hits home and really causes some problems for members of Congress and senators and, frankly, the administration.
So it's Colin Peterson who has the difference of opinion on how that should be structured in terms of who gets on and off of that program, and he wants a lot more of them off. And he's a Democrat. It's the sticking point.
Well, he's, and a lot of this is, there's the old adage, all politics are local. And so certainly different districts, different states, different regions have very, the program impacts are different people, and really, you see a lot more recipients in the urban areas, for example. Although there are many rural communities, particularly with the way this recent economic downturn has hit home in some places. You've got a lot of people that rely on this. I think the tough thing in this conversation is that this isn't abstract. This is, you're putting food on the table, and the individuals, this is where you get into a big issue with this, because people are using this to buy food. You have a lot of the individuals that are getting the benefit, the program, are older, or they're families with young children. And at the end of the day, this is a program that helps them feed their family. And when you start taking that away or telling people they can't get it, that's not an abstract matter for somebody who's struggling to feed the family. And so, from what I have learned and what I saw, you really want to be careful on how that policy comes out, because you're making a difference in somebody's life on the ground. And so I think there's a way to get there. I think, in my opinion, and I wouldn't pretend to be objective, considering that I worked on this for quite a bit, I don't see how the provisions from the House or that level of savings can ever get through. It's not going to pass the Senate and won't be signed by the president. In which case, if we want a farm bill, then there are decisions to be made. Where's the priority? Is the priority getting a bill, getting the entire package, and having the farm safety net, the conservation, the research, the energy dollars, as well as this food assistance? And it's been since 1973 that we put that the farm assistance side and the food assistance side got brought together. And there's a reason that's worked for 40 years, getting farm bills through. And so again, from my perspective, it seems like that's the only way you're going to get it. That's the only way you're going to get all sides of a bill with that much in it is to keep it together, find a way to not cause as much problem through the SNAP program, and get the acceptance. So it's quite an undertaking right now.
United we stand, divided we fall, and it's about the clout that both of those constituencies have in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think a couple of numbers that always jumped out at me in this discussion were more than 75% of the districts in the House are not rural, are not agriculture focused. And at the end of the day, you're counting votes, and it's what brings the votes to pass the bill and get it across the finish line. And I think the other number that always sort of struck me is you're talking about upwards of 45, 47 million Americans. There's not that many farmers. And, building these coalitions and finding a way to bring together multiple interests and sides into a compromise and into a coalition that will get the entire bill across the finish line. That's the way it gets done. And having lived through it twice on the Senate floor with the chairwoman, that's how you get the broad bipartisan vote that gets a bill to the president and into law, and building that coalition and keeping that coalition together, because there's plenty in there for somebody to attack, and from all sides, all ends of the political spectrum. And you're going to deal with that. But being able to have the coalition and a strong coalition around it keeps those attacks there. It's either something that you can win on a vote, or it makes people think about how they address the bill or go after the bill because you have support. The most troubling thing is watching it become partisan and watching some of what we've seen happen, which draws more animosity to the bill and makes it harder to complete, frankly.